What does working with an auditor typically look like during a SOC 2 audit? It really depends on the auditor that you're working with. Just like anything else, you pay what you get for. So if you're always thinking about price, and that's always the most important thing, then your auditor will have less time to work with you. It's probably going to be a more of a transactional relationship, right? Give me this evidence. You didn't give it to me. I don't have time to talk with you to figure it out. I got to move on to the next client. So we have to call it an exception, right? It becomes very transactional when it's very budget conscious audit. If you do spend a little bit more money, you can get an auditor that's willing to provide a little bit more guidance up front while not crossing that conflict of interest barrier, right? I mean, they still have to remain independent, but at the same time, a good auditor knows where that line is, and they're able to provide some guidance for SOC 2, help you understand your controls, help you what you need to accomplish to get it done. If you're doing something a different way, they're willing to work with you to understand, will this meet will this meet the trust services criteria if we do it this way? I know this says to do this, but can we do it this way? And what evidence do we need? And also, good auditors will, when they're doing a type 1, they'll be preparing you for that type 2. They're going to say, we're really doing this during type 1, but during type 2, you want to have A, B, C, D in place also, trying to help you avoid those areas of concern. So I would, really recommend finding an auditor that is about partnering with you, collaborating with you, not just being transactional. Give me an audit, give me my report, and I'll see you in 12 months. Does it make sense to work with an internal auditor or other resource first before engaging your CPA firm to do your SOC 2 audit? If you're a large enterprise customer, you have a lot of moving parts, you have a lot of systems in scope, a lot of applications, a lot of services, and you have an internal audit department, I do think that it makes sense to leverage your internal audit department to help you prepare for the audit. They understand what auditors are going to look for. They understand completeness and accuracy of evidence, and they can really help you prepare and designing your controls. However, if you're a smaller company, you're not going to have an internal audit department. So is there another resource you should have? It won't hurt to hire a consultant or hire an outside resource to help you drive this. But if you have the time internally and you have somebody who is given the proper time internally to do this, then you don't need to go out and hire an outside resource. That internal person can do their own gap assessment if they have the knowledge and competency to do that and the time. What do you need to consider when working with subservice organizations as part of planning for your audit? So the first thing is, do I have any inclusive subservice organizations? If you're using inclusive subservice organizations, that means they're going to be included in your audit, and your auditor is going to audit their controls that they're performing on your behalf and ask them for evidence. As part of planning, if this is going to be the case, you need to include them in the planning. You need to get their permission to do this, because they have to sign an assertion letter on their letterhead saying that they were part of your audit and gave the auditor everything they needed. So it's imperative that you work with them and get their confirmation ahead of time. If they're not willing to do this, that could be an issue, and you need to work with your auditor. If it's a carve-out subservice organization, there isn't much to do because you're carving them out. As long as they have a SOC 2 report that you can rely on, then you can request their SOC 2 report, get their monitoring of their controls, understand if they have appropriate controls in place, and you don't have to worry about doing anything else really. As long as that carved out subservice organization has a clean SOC 2 report, you should be good to go. Should I also get a SOC 3 report? First, we have to understand what a SOC 3 is. So a SOC 3 is a general use report that can be publicly made available on your website and freely distributed. That's unlike a SOC 2 report. SOC 2 reports are restricted use reports. You can't provide them publicly. You can't make them freely available, and they can only be provided to people that are intended users. The big difference between a SOC 3 and a SOC 2 is that a SOC 3 report will not include the description of the tests of the controls performed by the auditor, and it won't even include the controls that were in place or Section 4. SOC 2 reports have all that detailed information, so they can be used by your customers much more easily during their vendor risk assessments compared to a SOC 3. So should you get a SOC 3? Well, if you think that people will have use for it, then yes. A lot of times people get a SOC 3. It's more of a marketing tool. It's because it can be freely distributed. You can have it on your website, but your customers won't get the value out of it that a SOC 2 type 2 will provide, because it doesn't have those details. So I do think it's beneficial in certain situations. It's usually only an incremental cost because the auditor is doing the same procedures they would do in a SOC 2. They're actually it's just more administrative and changing the report. But at the end of the day, you still need to get that SOC 2 Type 2. You should never replace a SOC 2 Type 2 with a SOC 3.